So we'd like to welcome you to our actually the first virtual major developments panel that I've done in some time. Can I remind all attendees to turn mobile phones off, please, because there's nothing worse than a vibrating phone when we're doing presentations. And if we do introductions when people are coming into the make a contribution, I think that makes it a lot easier. Can I just refer members and officers to the published protocols for holding virtual meetings, noting the following. Members to ensure they have their videos on at all times and microphones on mute and is speaking. In case of a technical problem, the meeting may adjourn until the issue is resolved. If the technical problem persists and the meeting is incorrect, the meeting will be abandoned and rearranged for a later date. The meeting is being audio and video recorded and will be available on the website. Also, I'll set a car alarm off outside my house, but that's worse than a mobile phone at times. So can we move to item 1, which is attendance by reserved members? I think everyone's present and correct. Declarations of interest. Does anyone have any declarations of interest? No, I can't see any hands, but if anyone wants to comment or ask a question, can you use the hand function, and we can bring people in so we're not over talking each other. So we move to item 3. Can I have some any nominations for appointment of the vice chair, please? Paul?
Can I propose that Marilyn continues as vice chairman, please?
And do we have a seconder?
Chairman, I'll second Councillor Ashton.
Thank you. Do we have any other nominations? Barsha?
Can I propose David Perry, please?
Is that seconded, please?
Yes, I'll second David.
Thank you. That's interesting. Which one should we put it to the vote first? Well, all those. Let's be Marilyn first. Can you show if you're supporting nomination for Councillor Marilyn Ashton, please? I'll lose it off the screen, so I see 3. Can I see who's not voting for Councillor David Perry, please? See 1, 2, 3. So we say then that David's elected as vice.
Can I just put on record, I think it's a shame that we're moving away from being cross-party on this panel. For the time I've been on the major developments panel, it's always been split between the parties, obviously the administration having the chair and the opposition having the vice chair. Clearly you have the votes and can do it. I just think it's a real shame. And after next May, you'll be the one who suffers. So, you know, so be it.
Well, next May we might have more councillors then. We now move on to item number 4, which is the presentation on Plot S, which is Milton Road. And we do have a large number of people who are here making the presentation and commenting on the presentation. Before you come in on your part of the presentation, could you let us know who you are and your role within all of this? I think there's 2 parts to the, if we do the whole presentation to start with, then we can come back and do the Q&A session, which might make it easier. So is it Marie?
Yes, it is. My name is Marie. My name is Marie Brunborg. I'm an associate at Shepherd Robson Architects, and I'm project lead on Plot S. So I'll go straight to our presentation. Can you just confirm you can see my screen?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you for meeting with us. I think it's been relatively short notice, but we have 4 sections to the presentations. I'll briefly introduce the site, although I'm sure you're familiar with this. Then we'll look at massing and layout, the merging and design, and the landscape proposal. So the site and context. The site sits. This is the Milton Road development, and the site sits on the prominent corner and sets up a dialogue with the existing Harrow Central Mosque. and therefore has the potential to create a civic centre point and an extension to the High Street. There's also an important view that can be framed along Milton Road, looking towards the mosque, and the site also offers the opportunity to continue the logic of residential houses within the existing fabric and form part of the green edge that already exists. One of the links that should not be underestimated is how well connected the site is, with local bus routes and connection to Harrow and Wilston Station, which has both overground and underground and railway. The site sits next to the future Poets Corner development, which is here, which is currently the Civic Centre, and it comprises of an underused car park and an overgrown green space to the west of the site. We have tested a number of massing scenarios on this site, particularly taking on board comments made by Harrow Council and the Design Review Panel to consider a gradual transition from the apartment building to the townhouses along Milton Road. So the scheme is looking at an apartment building and a series of townhouses. So proposal C here, we feel, provides the most successful transition in massing along Milton Road from 7 to 5 to 3 stories, whilst also providing more homes in the apartment building, making this design more cost effective. We've also looked at proposal A and a proposal B, with an apartment building and townhouses, but these either have fewer apartments, making the homes expensive, or a massing that we feel wasn't successful, making the apartment building look bulky. So for the height and massing, the apartment building on the corner of Station Road and Milton Road is the tallest part of the proposal. Its height is in keeping with the Civic Centre and the mosque on the side opposite, and the buildings then reduce in height to 5 and 3 stories along Milton Road to respond to the changing context. At street level, we have a new retail or community enterprise, which extends Station Road's shopping area retail along and activate and provide an active frontage. Then turning into Milton Road, we have new homes accessed from the street that will transform Milton Road into a lively and attractive neighbourhood. In terms of materials, we'll come back to that a little later in the document, but we are proposing traditional brickwork to complement the existing character of Station Road. Going back to the site and context briefly, looking at the Milton Road within the wider landscape and placemaking strategy for Poets Corner, this shows an illustrative master plan for Poets Corner. It's indicative of the future framework, but to pick up on a couple of key principal moves, which will be developed further. The Milton Road development forms part of the southern landscape edge of the strategy, the sort of healing edge that helps stitch together the existing residential homes with the new master plan. And the heart of the new master plan suggests a new space based on existing trees, creating a green north-south link to the train station, and Milton Road forms the end view of this route. It also forms part of the High Street Square, extending north along the eastern boundary, and forms a prominent point on the axis from this new High Street Square. So going back to our proposal, the Milton Road development forms the first part of the emerging master plan for Poets Corner and provides 100% affordable homes. The scheme delivers 32 apartments and 10 townhouses. That's 10 affordable rented houses, 2 affordable rented accessible apartments and 30 shared ownership apartments. So in total, 42 new homes. And for the to the site plan, the key elements to this site layout is a shared amenity space and bike hub between the apartment building and the 10 townhouses, a new play area in the existing overgrown area to the west. And because of the narrowness of the site, some of the apartments are accessed via a short gallery access on the south side of the apartment building. All the houses are provided with private gardens and key distances between the Blarwith Road properties and the proposal are a minimum of 22 metres up to 29.5, nearly 30 metres. So looking at the ground and first floor plan, in developing these layouts, we've taken on board comments from Harrow Council, Secure by Design and the Design Review Panel, and we have optimised shared and private amenity space, provided residential front doors along Milton Road with individual refit doors integrated with the terraced houses and the ground floor apartments. And the apartment building has its own bike hub accessed from the street via the central core. The townhouses have the bike hub as part of the central amenity space, and the non-residential unit is accessed from Station Road to optimise active frontage on the high street. Large townhouse units, 4 beds, 7-person townhouses, are located to the west of the site to ensure they have the largest gardens, and these gardens range from about 25 to 30 metres square due to the angled site. The centre has 3-bed 5 units, 3-bed 5 houses, and these gardens range from about 21 to 24 metres. The typical floor plan comprised of 1 and 2 bedroom units, and they're all dual aspect apart from 2 units, which is on the first floor here and the second floor here. Other than that, they're all dual aspect units. So to the emerging design, again going back to the massing, this shows how we have worked to emphasise the prominent corner and the 3-storey shoulder and the intermediate 5-storey element. And what this also shows is how the scheme takes you from the high street with a prominent corner scaling down along Milton Road to the green play area at the western end, where it emerges with a more leafy residential context. For the emerging design, we're looking at a number of things. Firstly, on Station Road, it's about making a transition from the vernacular to the contemporary. We're looking at the strategy with a more formal arrangement for the corner building, with insert balconies and a clearly defined base with the non-residential unit and the apartment entrance at ground level. And as the building steps lower, it becomes less formal with lighter projecting balconies, and we begin to introduce the ground floor apartments with front gardens. The shared amenity space between the apartment building and the townhouses create for us a very helpful break, allowing the townhouses to work with similar but different features to the apartment building. And without features such as balconies, we worked with a playful faceted front with an emphasis on characterful residential entrance spaces. So again, looking more closely at the prominent corner, we are looking at the recessed balconies with more formal arrangement of windows, with brick panels and string cores below the windows to give proportions and character, and with less formal arrangement to the 5-storey elements with the projecting balconies. Looking at the view from Station Road, we like the way in which the prominent corner sets up a dialogue with Harrow Central Mosque, And we feel it creates a really elegant transition from the traditional high street to the contemporary, particularly with the emerging master plan for Poets' Corner in mind. Then turning into Milton Road, looking towards the mosque, it shows how the massing sets up and meets the mosque and the way in which the townhouses are simple but very characterful and have very playful entrances. And we're also conscious of activating the gable ends to provide some natural surveillance to the play space and the central shared amenity area, with a simple gesture of windows with a brick panel below that turn the corner and which is picking up on details from the apartment building. So there's a relationship between the two typologies. Looking at colour and materials, we are looking to use quality materials that will enhance and rejuvenate the feel of the area. The main material will be brick, and we've been looking for a brick which combine the existing tones and textures from Station Road, but has a new feel. We started by looking at the existing context, which is predominantly brick in different colour. The mosque is a sort of orange, the Citizens Advice Bureau is a purple brick, and the general high street houses are reds and browns with coloured detail. But of course, the chosen brick needed to leave options open to explore a rich material or palette for the emerging master plan for Poets' Corner as well. So we've been looking at a brick that incorporates some of the purples, reds and orange tones from the high street, which allow us to explore a rich palette for Poets' Corner. And these elevations are studies looking at the Milton Road elevation in relation to the mosque and in relation to Station Road, High Street and the existing civic centre. And also a rear elevation, again, looking at the relationship to the mosque. Now moving to the landscape proposal by BDP, we are focusing on a few key areas: the amenity space to the west, the shared amenity, the shared central amenity space, front and rear gardens, which are mostly paved but with some planters along Milton Road, and the residential entrance to the apartment building. The roofs will provide some brown roofs that will help with drainage and biodiversity. So looking at the play area in more detail, we are retaining the two large existing trees and create three entrances to the play space: a level entrance on the western corner and two stepped entrances to the north and to the east. And this level change is to deal with the existing level change along Milton Road. And the level change also means that the proposed accessible parking sits lower than the play space. So we're able to provide a low retaining brick wall so that the play space behind is protected. So the edges of the space will be soft planting, and the centre will provide play equipment and places to sit on soft surfacing. The edges facing Milton Road will also have a series of posts that will provide delineation but will maintain openness to the space. So this sketch shows a view of the play area showing the soft edges and the openness towards Milton Road. Play equipment and seating below the canopies of the existing large trees. So for looking at examples of play equipment, we're looking at a range from small to medium-sized equipment and play equipment ranging from age groups of 0 to 4 and 5 to 11. And we'll aim to focus on natural materials for this space. The shared amenity space, which we call the pocket garden, will contain 3 small multi-stemmed trees and it will have soft edges to provide defensible space for the apartment and the townhouses. There will be some cube seating and cycle stands to the front of the space to provide an active frontage onto Milton Road, with a flexible space to the rear, with the possibility of incorporating some catenary lighting. So following discussion with Secure by Design, we'll look to designing a gate for this space to prevent antisocial behaviour. And this sketch shows the character of this pocket garden, with its seating and Sheffield stands to the front, and a more flexible space to the rear in front of the bike hub. And these are some examples of furniture, planting and lighting within the pocket garden that will provide some biodiversity, the opportunity to engage with planting and allow for some bike repair and maintenance, but also some places to rest and interact with your neighbours. And I think that represents the end of the presentation.
Thank you, Marie. Before we go to questions, there's a number of other people here from the Regen team and from Waits, and also from the council and Cabra. Does anyone want to add anything to the presentation at this moment in time? No. So do we have any questions at all? Paul?
Just to be clear, we still own this site, so this is a council-owned site, so we're the clients as well as the planning authority in this thing. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
I mean, I just find it strange that we're using kind of the mosque as the height for the area, whereas everywhere else surrounding it is just normal two-storey terraced houses, and we're therefore using the fact that there's a dominant building as in the mosque to justify putting another 7-storey building in Harrow. And I think it would just be much nicer if we could continue townhouses on that site rather than putting these apartments in. And I think the shared amenity space, to me, looks complete waste of time. I can't imagine anyone wanting to sit there, especially if you put a gate in front of that. You're surrounded on all sides by buildings, and then a gate in front of you with 1 or 2 seats for how many people there are in those apartments. It just seems, especially after the last 16 months, if we are the client, we should be looking at giving a much better shared amenity space to anyone we were putting in or renting a house to.
I think the shared amenity space will, depending on the gate design, but that will form, an openness to Milton Road, and it's about 75 metres square. It's relatively large. It's got the bike hub to the rear, so it should be quite an attractive space with the planting.
But so if you look at those pictures, if just one family is in it, it would already start to feel full. I mean, this is not for, how many apartments are there going to be in that 7-storey and 5-storey buildings?
There are 32 apartments and the 10 townhouses.
So, I mean, you've got what, 1, 2, 3 seats for that many flats, and that's their shared space, and that's their only open space. I just not particularly keen on that.
Thank you, Paul.
The point I'm making is this is not like a normal thing with this, where we are the planning authority and there's limited options we have to go along with what the developer is suggesting. In this case, we are the developer as well, and I just think we should be setting an example to people in terms of amenity space rather than doing this. But that's just my view.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your comment at the moment. We can have comments at the end if we need to. Did you have any other questions about the presentation? Next is Stephen.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the presentation. Just wanted to come back to the shared amenity space. So, who will the shared amenity space be for? Will it be for the people just in this development, or will it be open to the people that move into Poets Corner, or will it be more of a public thing? What's the situation?
So the central amenity space will be gated, but this will be open to the general public. I guess this could be open to the general public, but the Secure by Design felt that this needed to be gated. And there is.
Sorry, I was going to say. I mean, so basically that big shared amenity space on the left is basically just like a new kind of mini park.
On the western side.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, because I'm a bit concerned about that. I mean, it seems very nice, but I'm a bit concerned about that from the point of view of security, because it's sort of, you can imagine that, you can imagine that being a sort of a sort of drawing crowds at night, and I mean, in terms of has any thought been given to the security aspect of it, and how you would keep it for the use it's been intended for, rather than necessarily getting sort of the wrong crowd in there that might cause antisocial behaviour problems in the area.
Sure, I guess it could be gated, but I guess there's a conflict then how you make sure people use it as a play area.
And who would maintain it? Would it be under the council ownership, or who would own it and maintain it?
Sorry, hi there. I'm Jodie McCarthy-Mills. I'm from the regeneration team. I might just help Marie out with that, if that's okay. It would be anticipated that the council, so this is 100% affordable housing, and so it would be retained by the council and managed by the council. And
would it basically be managed by the council parks team, or would it go into the housing department, or how would that?
It's anticipated that it will go into the parks team, but that's subject to discussion with colleagues at this early stage.
Okay. Thank you for that. And just going into the back gardens of the properties, of the other properties, do some of those gardens, especially the ones towards the east, they look quite small. Are they all policy compliant? All of those back gardens?
Yes, they're actually twice the size of nationally described space standards. So, for a 3-bed 5-person house, you would require, I think it's 9 meters square, whereas these range from, I think they go down to 21 meters to 24 meters square. And the 4-bed 7, this one, I think it's 25 or 30, and that's about to about 25 meters square. So they are all larger than the nationally described space standards.
And the ones towards the very east?
These ones, yes, they are also larger. Because these are apartments, so these. Yeah. These are 2-bedroom apartments, so you'd expect 6 meters square, whereas this is probably about 18 meters square each of them. So they are larger.
Okay.
And that's not counting for the amenity space at the front.
Okay. Right. Okay. Thank you. And in terms of, I didn't hear that much about park. I mean, you mentioned there's the 3 disabled spaces. Are there any other parking spaces planned?
No, so the scheme is car free, and we're providing 3 parking spaces at the onset of the proposal.
Right. I mean, I think that I mean, I understand it. Obviously, it's near a station, but it is a bit concerning to have something like that, because especially when it's backing onto a residential area, you know, there's often a concern of overspill parking, you know, so you know, that you know, has that been considered in terms of, you know, the impact of not having any parking spaces, the impact on the local area?
Yeah, yes, I mean it's car free, and because it's so well located to local transport, we feel it's reasonable that this is a car free development.
I mean, all I would say is that when something is described as car free, that means parking space free. It doesn't necessarily mean car free, because unless you're going to, unless it, I don't know, maybe you can agree, but unless it's going to be written into the tenancy agreement that people who live there can't have cars.
Exactly.
You know, it's going to be very difficult to prevent people having cars. I mean, even if you prevent people from having parking permits, they can still have cars and still try and park them, you know, outside of the permitted hours or somewhere where there aren't parking permits. And are you actually going to, is the idea to physically, you know, make it contrary to their tenancy agreements to have cars, or, you know, will they still be allowed to have cars and live there if they want to?
I can come in there, Marie. I think, like I say, it is early days. I think subject to discussion with colleagues about how that management works. Obviously, there are things that can be done to prevent people from using the cars, or very much discourage people from parking their cars in the local area, like engaging with our parking colleagues to ensure that there would be provision within the planning consent that would mean that we would have to define that, and we would have to be very clear about how we would manage that. But I mean, it is a scheme where that is, like I say, located near the train station and decent public transport, and it's anticipated that people who would move here would move there because of that. They would go there because it is well located, and that, you know, there are plenty of people on the housing register who actually don't have a car. People who, you know, who would go here would consider that when they're either purchasing through shared ownership or accepting an offer.
And even families.
Families, there are families on the housing register who wouldn't have a car, and I suppose, you know, when we go out to offer, that will be discussed with them and will be considered as part of the management.
Can I just make an observation? It's a hypothetical question in the sense that people moving there would know that there's no parking, and they'd have to, if they did have a car, they'd have to make their own arrangements to find somewhere to park it. But we can come back to comments at the end, Stephen.
Am I just able to add a quick response on that point? So my name's Olivia Russell. Apologies, I joined a little bit late. I'm from CBRE. We're acting as planning agents. So I just wanted to add the fact that the site is in PTAL 4 and 5, which is considered to be very good in terms of public transport accessibility. And the Mayor's London plan has sort of car free as a starting point for all developments in good PTAL areas. But in terms of going forward, we can certainly discuss potential for permit free and controlled parking with Harrow highways, and how this could be secured via legal agreement.
Yes, we have, oh, it's gone down. We've got 3 hands up. Did you have any more questions, Stephen, rather than comments? Or
I thought they were all questions, but no, I don't have any more questions.
That's okay. Marilyn.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Just a very quick question. As Councillor Osborne pointed out, this is we are kind of the architects of this in a sense. I don't mean in the true sense, because but it's a council-owned site. Council's in the driver's seat, so you're making an assumption that the Poets Corner development will continue to go ahead in its present form, because it hasn't got planning permission. It's not there. It hasn't got planning permission. The mosque is there. Yes, we know that. But that reads as a different type of structure, because it is a place of worship. And in actual fact, although the minaret is very high, the rest of the building isn't as high as 7 stories anyway. And I just wonder whether or not it's sensible to assume, in the event that there are different people running the council next year, that there will be a continuation of the kind of plans that are afoot now. Because you see, the trouble is otherwise we might end up a bit piecemeal, because you can't rely on the fact that the development opposite will be anything like the kind of vision that we have now. And I wondered if you thought of that.
I mean, yes, we have thought about the future development of Poets Corner, and the sort of height is set at the lower end of the heights that we're imagining for Poets Corner, or matching.
I think that's my point, but I think you've understood what I've just said anyway. And I just wondered if you thought of that, because I don't, although it's not a massive building, the 7-story high building, it still is considered to be anything over 6 stories high, a tall building. And so therefore you can't let a development that hasn't got planning permission, that may change dramatically and may never happen. Who knows, right? You can't assume it will. So I worry a little bit that we're sort of getting ahead of ourselves, giving ourselves a permission or encouraging something when we actually haven't got any certainty about the rest. I just say that in a helpful way, but I think you probably know that. Thank you.
Thank you, Marion. I'll save my comments for the end, really. David.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I've got one question. Just listening to Councillor Ashton there, I don't necessarily think this is a one-off tall building. There is, within the areas, the other side of the Civic Centre, there is some sort of blocks there already that have been there for 10, 12 years, and so it's not like an isolated building. But my question, some of them have already sort of been covered on the parking issue, etc., is the presenter mentioned brown roofs, and depending on the build-up and the design of a brown roof, some of them can actually look very tacky and overgrown, and so I get the green argument to a brown roof, etc., but I just sometimes when you go past some of these flats of brown roofs, they're not well maintained and well kept, and so sometimes it can be a bit of an eyesore depending on what the sort of maintenance regime looks like. Thank you.
You probably wouldn't see these roofs from street level, because they will have parapets above. So I mean, hopefully they won't be badly maintained, but they shouldn't be visible from the street if they were badly maintained.
Thank you. And Barsha.
Thank you. So unless I missed it, how many bed apartments, etc. is it? Because I know you're trying to get the capacity there, and many times we end up having 1 bed when I always worry how we're going to house families, etc. And you've checked what kind of, what the need is, etc. And the other point, what's happening with infrastructure, because you're building, all these apartments, etc. The infrastructure will still be the same. So is there something going to be done about that? And obviously it's one way, etc. So what's going to happen about all that stuff?
Thank you. Would you like me to pick that up, Marie? Hi. So there are 42 new homes across this site. 32 of those would be in the flats in the apartment block, and then 10 houses, and that's been discussed with my colleagues, and they've my colleagues in housing need, and they've expressed that they would prefer houses for rent because that isn't something that they have often. Many times they have, affordable rented apartments, and there is actually a need for houses within the borough which would make that corner apartment block for shared ownership with 1, 2 and 3 beds in there. And we have consulted on that, and there is a need for all of, we understand there to be a need for all of that. In terms of the infrastructure, we will be compliant with what we need to provide. There is no intention at this point to make any amendments to highways. Naturally, drainage and other infrastructure that services the site will be compliant within the capacity that's required.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Is there any other questions? Stephen.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Just further question. You mentioned at the beginning that that it would be in terms of, you looked at proposals for providing more of the houses, the family size houses, but you felt it'd be too expensive. When you made that assessment, did you take into account the possibility of getting affordable housing grant?
Yes, yeah. So this is, as we said earlier, it's 100% affordable housing scheme. So the financial evaluation is being done on the basis of that income and also the cost of that then to the council. And really the intention is about providing as many homes as we can within the viability, and not over densifying the site as far as we can. We want to provide make best use of the site and ensure that we're bringing forward the minimum number of homes really to make it viable. And this is proposal C that you're looking at now, is a site that is a scheme that provides us with the numbers of homes that we would need to ensure that the scheme can pay for itself. And that includes funding under the Building Council Homes for Londoners scheme. Does that answer your question? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Pam.
Yeah, sorry if you've discussed this already, but are these homes intended to be permanent homes for people, or are they intended to be used for kind of long-term temporary accommodation, or is that something that will just be determined at a later point according to the need?
So the apartment block are for shared ownership, is the current intention. Which is identifiability. The houses, which would be they would be let by our housing team under I believe probably secure tenancy of it would be London living rent, so it would be as per their current policy.
Okay, so they're not council properties. Okay, sorry, misunderstood. Thank you.
And 4.
So just a quick question on that shared amenity space between the blocks and the townhouses. In terms of the sunlight, how much sunlight would they get, and when would they get it during the day?
Marie?
Yeah, they will get the sunlight throughout the day. Obviously, north is up, so it'll get the sort of minimum 2 hours of sunlight.
I think that is all the questions. There's no more hands up. Just on the play area on the left-hand side, the west-hand side, we'd have a similar sort of play area on the Milton Road developments that sort of people can walk in and use. And they haven't had any social behaviour there. But if it needs a gate at a later, when you're going through the design stage, before when the planning permission application goes in, then maybe that be considered, because what you were talking about earlier. Well, Marilyn, you put your hand up.
Yes, are we on to comments, Chair? Is that all right?
Yes, we can have comments now. Good.
Okay. Right. An observation is that if the 1, 2, 3 bed flats are shared ownership, which of course we know is categorised as affordable housing, I'm not saying it's not, but they're not cheap. It's you still have to have quite a decent income to be able to enter into a shared ownership scheme. And I just worry a little, particularly with the 3-bed flats and even the 2-bed flats. And I'm afraid I'm going to go back to an issue that Councillor Greet raised in his questions. I worry a little bit about whether or not people will be willing to actually spend quite a lot of their money. I mean, well, not as expensive as straightforward buying a property on the open market, of course, but it's still very expensive, and not have anywhere to park at all. I mean, I worry about that. I think even if something has a PTEL score of 5 or even 6, amazingly, human beings being what they are, particularly if they're larger apartments, they might still yet need to have a car, because this is not a central London location. And PTEL scores are a measure, but they don't always tell you the appropriateness or usefulness of the hubs, and this particular hub, the Harrow Wealdstone line, it is distinctly different, for example, from the Met line, which runs obviously past Harrow on the Hill station, which I would find more useful personally if I had to rely on the train. So I worry a little bit about the viability, because you know, then if they can't be sold as shared ownership, I just worry a bit about the maths, to be honest. I'm you know, I am concerned about that. I think you might struggle to sell them.
Thank you, Marion. And Paul.
Thank you. Just because that slide's up, I'm just curious. We seem to be very concerned about the transition from 7 stories down to 3 stories if you look along Milton Road, but we seem totally unconcerned by the transition on Station Road from 2 stories to 7 stories. And I'm just curious why we ignore that. I'm also, because to me, proposal B, I think, has more to say for it than proposal C, but that's an aside. I also do think that it would be helpful if something could be done to give more amenity space for those flats, if we are going to have those flats, to just have them with that little bit of amenity space, even if it means potentially using some of the playground at the far end, or maybe one of the townhouses, just to create some extra space for people. As I said, I think, you know, the last 16 months have made me more glad than ever that I've got a very small but a garden, and I would hate to be one of the 32 flats in that those 2 blocks that didn't even have that or had such a limited space. So, you know, to the extent that we are making suggestions and comments, and given we're a bit more in the driving seat than normal, I'd be concerned about the transition from Station Road as you come along, and also really keen to find ways of having more amenity space for those flats.
Shall I just quickly respond and just to say that that amenity space isn't the only amenity space that the the people in the apartment building have, because each of the apartments obviously have private amenity space in the form of a balcony.
Thank you.
Changed my view, but thanks.
David.
Yes, yeah, just by way of comment, just following on from Councillor Osborne there, and I kind of have sympathy with his comment earlier on about the attractiveness with a big gate, a small amenity space with a gate. Yeah, it's probably not the most attractive space, but maybe that could be looked at as we move forward. Maybe have another option, I don't know. But yeah, I've got sympathy with that. But my general view on the development, and it is a small strip of land, if you like, it is ours, and what I've sort of been impressed with is that we haven't just tried to just absolutely bulk that small site with large buildings throughout. I think to hear the officers describe it as the largest which makes viable rather than trying to just be completely excessive. But that's what the consultation is going to be for, and will come forward. So by and large, with what we've got there at the moment to what's being proposed, and given the need, the housing need, etc., keen to see it move forward really and go to sort of the upcoming consultation.
Thank you, David. And the final comment from Stephen, I think.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I've said, I mean, I do think this presentation was quite thorough, and I welcome all the detail. I am pleased to see that this development has managed to incorporate a number of houses. I think we do know, and the leader knows because I've questioned him about it multiple times, that we do need to think about the overcrowding problem in Harrow. I believe it's particularly acute in Harrow, and I think it's important to provide more family homes. I would like to if possible to see if I appreciate what you said about viability. I would hope that there could be an ongoing appraisal of that, because I think it would be nice to see a bit more a bit more in terms of homes, in terms of houses provided, instead of the apartment blocks. So I think if more consideration could be given to providing a larger number of houses along this strip, it does seem like an ideal site for that. And I think I with the best will in the world, I don't see how the amenity space on the west, it's a nice idea, but I'm concerned about how that might be used in future. And I think there's a missed opportunity there for potentially extending a row of nice townhouses. You could have potentially have a nice row of townhouses pretty much maybe not necessarily all the way to the end, but certainly a bit further along. So I would hope that more consideration could be given to that. And I would whilst I appreciate what you said about the PTAL, I think it would be good to try to see if some parking can be put in there. I mean, obviously we know that it's that we know there are good transport links there if you want to go to central London, but the reason why a lot of people still have cars in outer London places like Harrow is that it's harder to get around if you want to go to other places more locally in the area. So I would like to see some consideration of that. But yeah, those are my comments. I look forward to seeing how this scheme develops.
Thank you, Stephen. There is no more hands up, so actually I do agree with part of what Stephen said. I think there's a lot of detail within the presentation, which is very welcome, rather than some of the sort of really broad outlines that we've seen on some in the past. And this has given us a lot. And I do think it is a balance between affordable housing and attracting that funding in to what you can deliver on this site to make it cost in. As there are no other questions or comments, I'd just like to thank, my mind's gone blank here. It shouldn't do. Maybe it's Marie, isn't it? It is Marie.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, I'd just like to thank Marie and her team, but also the other people who come along, because Jodie's here as part of the Regen team and she's answered some of the questions already. And Olivia was also speaking around some of the things around Cabra and the design elements, and we've also got some people from highways as well. So there's a lot of if the questions have come up, they were ready to answer them. So our next steps is that I suppose this goes out to public consultation now, and then you'll start building towards planning application, taking on board the comments that you've heard tonight as well. Is that okay?
That's correct. Thank you.
Thank you very much everyone for your time, and have a nice evening.
Thank you very much.